Okay, everyone, this is my spoiler review of X-Men the Animated Series Season 3, Episode 7, The Phoenix Saga Part 5, Child of Light. This originally came out September 9th, 1994. It's also pretty cool to see that this whole Phoenix Saga, when it originally came out, was every single day. So that must have been crazy for kids that week that it was that quickly you were getting each episode. But make sure to hit that sub button before I jump into this review so you don't miss one of my reviews of X-Men the Animated Series. I'll also be doing X-Men 97 when that comes out, and I also review all things X-Men in general, comics, figures, you name it. So in this big finale of the saga, we see that D'Ken basically takes care of the X-Men here when they try to stop him at this last moment. He's got all this power from the crystal, but now he's actually creating his own universe in the crystal where the X-Men will eventually end up in this episode. And what they had foreshadowed in previous episodes is shown now getting its payoff, where Cyclops is like, what can we do? And this is when Jean says nothing. It's what I must do. It's setting up this big sacrifice she's going to make that she has to do at the end of this episode, and the different responsibilities she has now being with the Phoenix Force and things that only she has the power to do, which requires her to make huge sacrifices. So as Phoenix in the beginning of the episode tries to stop the crystal and contain it, she gets sucked into it, and this is really funny that it sets up then the next moment. Corsair opens fire on the crystal, and the Gladiator's like, well, that had no effect, and Wolverine's like, anyone else got any bright ideas? So they still get those great Wolverine lines in moments like this. What was also interesting was they showed you the environmental disturbances on Earth this is causing. We get cameos of teams we've seen in the past in this show. We get another appearance of War Machine, but the most exciting cameo by far is we get our first appearance of Spider-Man in X-Men the Animated Series. It's only his hand and seeing his shadow, but that's it, but it's still very, very cool. And there's a great line here where Professor X explained to Jubilee that the crystal is slowly drawing everything into it, even the sun's light. And he said there is one hope, the X-Men. What's interesting, though, is he keeps talking about, and he'll say at the end of the episode, how the X-Men saved the day. But really, it's all Jean here in the Phoenix Force. That's what's really leading this. And I guess because she's in the X-Men, that's the X-Men still, but you really feel like the whole group of the X-Men isn't really as needed, as important as Jean and Phoenix are in this saga. Now, as the X-Men are getting sucked into the crystal and they don't know what's about to happen to them, I love they have this romantic moment with Gambit and Rogue where he's like, hang on, Cher, if this be our last ride, we take it together. I thought that was nice. It's so cool, though, when you see this inside of the crystal with D'Ken. It shows you how it inspired other visual areas like this, and it reminded me a lot of the recent season of Stranger Things when Max is inside Vecna's mind, and you see that whole world Vecna's in. It looks a lot like that, so you kind of see where maybe Stranger Things got some inspiration. And we get to see some amazing animation with D'Ken here. All the things they have fun with the animators, what he can do here in his powers. And one of the coolest moments was when Rogue threw a full boulder at him and he just melts it. I thought that was really cool. But Lilandra, this whole episode, is trying to talk sense into her brother, like, look, bro, like, you're trapped in here too. The crystal's gonna be your end too, so just stop. And he's just not listening to any of this. He's just maniacally laughing through the whole episode. And we get this giant battle between D'Ken and he versus the X-Men, the Imperial Guard, and the Starjammers all at once. They're all working together now. But there is a nice montage through the battle, which I loved, where it's all them saving each other. And it shows that importance the X-Men always have, is that, like in the comics, they're always saving each other in these battles first before even attacking the enemy. But as you're watching this, you realize, like, this is one of those episodes that's tough to review now because it's really one of those episodes kids probably went crazy for because of the battles and the action this whole first half. It's all action. And the strength really in the writing in this episode and the specialness of it is in the end with the writing. So as watching it now as an adult, watching these action scenes are cool, but it just is a lot. And I was just kind of like getting a little bored, to be honest, watching D'Ken and his maniacal laughing for so long. But it's saved to me by the brilliant end and the writing in the end of the episode and Phoenix's big moment. So again, it's so hard to review things like this, especially because of what you're seeing it and from your own bias and who you are. I'm not a kid anymore, but if I was a kid, I'm amazed by this first half. So I still bring that up in points, though, because it's doing its job. It's a kid's show animated, so that's what you want to do. You want to make the kids happy, but you also have a great moment for maybe when they get older and can appreciate more of the writing towards the end. So it does really work, but that's just me saying, as watching it now as an adult, the first half I'm kind of like, okay, let's get on with it, because I'm in general not a huge fan also in superheroes when they're like a bunch of people facing one giant thing. I just don't like giant villains. I think they can get really kind of boring watching characters fight them. That's my personal opinion. But Phoenix comes in, is like, do not despair. The Phoenix survives. And this is where the tide turns here in the battle. And she basically just brings everyone to Lilandra's ship. And this is where Phoenix informs everyone that Jean was chosen for her empathic abilities. She feels the crystal's pain where the Phoenix couldn't, which is a really cool explanation. And she's like, I know now what must be done if I am strong enough. So she has to join with the matrix of the crystal's energy field. And Jean's like, don't try to stop me, Scott. I'm only doing what must be done, what any of the X-Men would do. So this is great. And she says, you can't be a part of where I'm going. This is what I was talking about, how they did a really good job in the saga, foreshadowing, setting up how this is that alone decision Jean is going to have to make on her own. And the waterworks start coming from different characters here. And she gives Wolverine a nice little kiss on the cheek. And she's like, goodbye, my friends. I love you all. And floats up, having this romantic moment with Scott. Really, really well done. This is the most emotional the show's gotten so far. And I love the moment when Jean thinks of all the X-Men and their passion and their courage and their kindness. It helps her push through here thinking of them, which was really powerful. We see a visual of like an X-Men type Christmas tree with Storm as the angel on top, I guess. But Phoenix contains the crystal, and that's what Professor X reflects at, but at what cost? So that's setting up things to come down the road. But Jean has to take the crystal far, far away to protect everybody. This is where all the X-Men start crying. That's where if you have to saw, you start tearing up here. So it's really, really strong. And she says, the light, oh Scott, if only you could see it. I really like that line too. It was very spiritual in a way. And symbolic of the hope that Professor X is going to talk about to Cyclops later on in the episode that he's going to need. And Lilandra says goodbye to Xavier, and we know there's love there, but they both know they have jobs to do. And Kosera apologizes to Cyclops for using him against the Emperor, and they still don't know the father and son that they are to each other, so I thought that was interesting. And the best line of the episode is when Xavier talks to Cyclops, and he says, do you know the legend of the Phoenix? The Phoenix was a mythical bird that was consumed by fire, but always arose again from the ashes. Perhaps that's what the Phoenix represents, hope which never dies. And that's when Cyclops thinks of Jean and starts tearing up and says, Jean. We also saw Wolverine right before say Jean and very upset about it, so it changes everything for the X-Men going forward, and it gets you excited to see what's going to happen next with this big sacrifice of Jean and how they handle that and having to find hope now in darker times. And I love that it comes full circle with the Phoenix and what it represents, not only just being this powerful Phoenix force in the show, but what actual visuals of Phoenix means and rising from the ashes. So really ties up well. This is honestly a great episode, and I'm going to review the first half as watching it as a kid on a Saturday morning, and then the second half as watching as an adult, and say it's one of the best of the show. So I'm going to give this one a 9.5. Let me know what you thought down below of this episode. I love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment. I try to respond as many as I can. Hit that sub button so you don't miss one of my X-Men reviews. This is a new channel. I can use all the help I can get, and I'll see you next time.